everybody. I am Stephanie Van Bark. I am an entrepreneur and small business owner. Welcome to Just Talking Business. So, today we're talking tourism. We are going to learn from an expert and guru on how this business works and how to pivot in an industry that is not a necessity, but definitely one of the most important industries we have globally. So, without further ado, let's talk to. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Hey, Stephanie, I'm doing well. How about you?
Very good. Thank you for joining us today. You got two Stephanies today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I think I kind of stopped you a little bit to get you on the show because I wanted to really have this conversation around tourism. So, thank you for doing it.
Hey, my
Uh,
pleasure.
so, start with telling us who you are and what you do.
Ooh, let's see. I don't want to take up the whole show, so let me give you the abbreviated version. I am Stephanie M. Jones. Let me just talk a little bit about my background in travel and tourism, which spans for about the past 13 years now.
Mhm.
Since I've been in travel and tourism full time, I have done several pivots, as you mentioned in your introduction. But my primary role in the industry has been one as an advocate and representative of Blacks in travel and tourism. And when I say advocate and representative, that means that working on behalf of Blacks in the industry to create equitable opportunities,
Mhm.
whether it's for small Black businesses, whether it's for Black travel and tourism professionals, students who are in a part of the industry or considering the industry, and just really trying to carve out more space for us in this industry to not just survive but thrive, and to not just be at tables but to create tables, so that again we can thrive in this industry. So I've been doing this work specifically for travel and tourism, in several different roles.
Mhm.
I think I really started about 13 years ago, working for the Greater Miami Convention Visitor Bureau as a
I was
consultant.
there.
Yeah, and I
Good.
work with the multicultural tourism departments team to put
Mhm.
together a tourism readiness training for underrepresented Black and Brown businesses in the heritage neighborhoods. And during my time doing that work, it really allowed me to get a better understanding of the travel and tourism landscape in the
Right,
Miami area. And what I quickly learned is that it was not equitable. Oh my God, what's
right,
happening? It was not equitable, and that people that look like me and you were not really prospering
right,
in the industry.
right.
So I decided that I wanted to create opportunities, for more tourism foot traffic and revenues to flow
Mhm.
into our communities and our small businesses. And that's when I started CHAT, Cultural Heritage Alliance for
I
Tourism.
remember.
You may remember that we were
I do.
doing
Do.
walking and bus tours of historic Overtown, Little Havana, Little Haiti, West Coconut Grove. One, to amplify the rich cultural heritage of those destinations, but also to drive tourism foot traffic to the small restaurants, art galleries, and museums and other businesses. And so that really, I think, for me, um, it it ignited my belief that the industry needed to be disrupted
Right,
because it was not equitable. And this was before the pandemic in 2020.
right,
And so I sought out to really create opportunities to engage, Black and Brown businesses into the
right.
industry or the tourism ecosystem through doing these tours that Chat facilitated. But then the pandemic came in 2020, and the tours that we were doing, halted like everything
Right,
else in the
right,
world, but especially in travel and tourism. And so, what that allowed me to do was to really lean back into what I like to call my zone of genius as a
right,
marketer for over, 25 years and a
right.
business strategist, and also a nonprofit consultant to think about what were the needs of, small businesses in travel and tourism, and what were their challenges and struggles facing the pandemic. And so I pivoted back into my nonprofit days, where again I created another entity called Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance, chia for short, which primarily provided tourism readiness training and education to help these smaller businesses get tourism ready to be able to do business with the global travel and tourism industry.
Okay.
We also did consulting work for destinations that wanted to really be intentional around DEI. And
Right.
so we work with Visit Lauderdale and some other destinations around the country, as well as globally, like South African tourism,
Right.
to help them strategize on how to be intentional about inclusive tourism and creating equitable opportunities to engage underrepresented small tourism and hospitality businesses into the travel trade supply chain and the tourism ecosystem.
Okay.
I'll
Look, you've done a
pause
lot
there.
in 13, you've done a lot in 13 years. And
Yeah,
you are right. I was there, I think, when you really started the chat move in Miami. And it was very interesting to kind of watch you move and then look at, where this industry was and where it's become today. Um, what is the word? What is I'm trying to for with tourism? Generally, and when you started, when I heard tourism, I generally thought it was flight, hotel, potentially doing some tours around communities. Talk to us a little bit about the products that are so pivotal and so important in this tourism industry, especially when you're looking at cultural tourism, how it impacts communities in the way that it does economically.
sure. But first, I want to address something you said in your introduction, that this industry is not a necessity. I beg to differ, and I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Travel and tourism is very much it's very much necessary and needed. One, because most people only, when they think about travel and tourism, let's say when they think about travel, because they don't really even think about tourism,
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
think about the leisure side of travel. You're getting on a plane or going on a cruise and you're going
Mhm.
on vacation. There is a whole different part of this industry that most people don't know about, tourism, which is really focused on the business side, the travel trade side of the industry, the players that move this industry, that make it happen, the businesses, from the large scale cruise lines, hotels, and airports to your local businesses,
Mhm.
restaurants, tour operators, cultural museums. These are
Mhm.
all major players in the industry that make it move
Mhm.
and become very necessary, because tourism and travel is one of the largest industries in the world,
Powerful.
like a $9 trillion
Right.
industry, a $9 trillion industry, and it creates hundreds of thousands of jobs,
Mhm.
so it is very necessary, especially for a lot of Black and Brown people who rely on this industry for employment.
Mhm.
So I just want to address that tourism is very necessary. From a cultural heritage perspective, it's very necessary because, again, it has the capability of helping to preserve rich history and
Mhm.
culture in destinations, not just domestically, but internationally as well. Because most travelers or tourists, when they travel, they want to have those local, authentic cultural heritage experiences that
Mhm.
allow them to really become immersed in the culture, in the heritage of destinations, which means they want to go to the local restaurants, they want to go to the small museums, they want to stay in communities where that they can engage with local people, and really, again, immerse themselves in the culture through the food, the music, the art, the
Mhm.
dance, all of that. And so travel and tourism is essential to the well-being of every destination, really, because without it, it's a destinations really it impacts them economically when tourism
Right.
is not constantly flowing. And when you even think about it on a broader scale, let's think about the countries that are now, that have been in wars for the past several
Right.
years,
Right.
and
Right.
how no one is traveling to those destinations. Let's think about just this, this environment we're living in today with the tariff wars and how that
Uh-huh.
has impacted people coming into the United States or wanting to travel abroad.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think, politically and environmentally and economically, it does impact travel and tourism, but oftentimes it's the smaller businesses and local communities that are
Yes.
far more impacted, than the hotels and the airlines and the cruise lines. Because one, it's difficult when we're not dealing with all of these external factors
Right.
for them to get a foothold in this industry, because oftentimes travelers and tourists, when they're coming to a destination, they don't even know about small businesses
Right.
in historic Overtown or Little Haiti.
Hmm.
I will say that the Miami Convention Visitor Bureau is one of few destination marketing organizations that have really done a consistent job and really trying to amplify these heritage neighborhoods and showcase the Black businesses and cultural attractions in the destinations. But most have not, been intentional about making certain that these smaller cultural heritage businesses and suppliers are part of their local tourism ecosystem, so when inbound travelers are coming to a destination, they can find them and patronize them.
Right.
But again, this happens globally, not just in the US. It's very difficult for small micro enterprises that consider themselves part of the tourism and hospitality industry to scale, and in some cases to sustain their businesses,
Right.
because again, travel and tourism is very much a pay to play industry. And
Right.
if you cannot afford to be in the room at the travel trade shows where you can meet with domestic and international buyers to sell your products, your tour products, or to promote your hotel or your restaurant, then you're not even in the game, and you're more reliant on your local business that you're receiving in order to sustain. But again, travel is a global industry, and you
Mm.
have travelers from around the world visiting different parts of the United States. And there's no reason why smaller businesses, restaurants, cultural museums should not be able to sustain and scale and build profitable businesses from the amount of money that flows into destinations.
Because it
And
feels like to
mhm,
me
sure.
there's got to be, because I agree. I connect with the Greater Miami Visitors Bureau, and I think they do an amazing job because it's been intentional. So it feels like to me there's got to be an ecosystem or an entity, be that governmental, political, whatever that looks like, that it is their intention to create an ecosystem that really looks at providing these opportunities, these feeder opportunities. Like we said, Miami has this, but as you're looking globally, are you having to go into some of these markets and help advise them on how to really craft an environment that supports that kind of opportunity?
It's really twofold. And to answer your question, yes, that this is the work that I've been doing for the past 13 years, trying to bridge gaps between small businesses and the buyers and the players, that are in a position to help them grow. But again, it's twofold, because one, for small businesses who are part of this industry, oftentimes they don't understand the global travel and tourism industry, how it
Mhm.
works, who the players are, and how to become positioned to participate and profit in it. So that's a big part. The lack of tourism education,
Mhm.
to help them understand how to position their businesses, because this industry is so unique in how you make money. because you can't simply join a chamber of commerce
Mm-hmm.
and expect to, from the networking and from, the education that they provide to enhance your business, which is great. But
But that's a
that's not
different
going to put you in front
market.
of domestic and international buyers.
Mm-hmm.
The people who can really bring groups into your restaurant
Right.
or groups onto your tour trip. So it does require educating the small businesses, and that's something we've been doing through our Diversity Tourism Academy, which I'm happy to talk about more, because we have now really converted the academy to on demand so that businesses around the world can access tourism readiness training and education
Okay.
and resources to learn how to navigate this industry and to better position themselves to prosper in it. But then the other part of it are your destination management organizations, DMOs, your tourism boards globally, and even global brands who don't really and most have not invest in trying to integrate these smaller businesses, also known as suppliers, into the travel trade supply chain. And why
Mm-hmm.
does that matter? Because one, keep in mind that, research does show that when people travel, they want to have these local authentic cultural heritage experiences. They
Mm-hmm.
want to and they want, especially black travelers are intentional about wanting to support black businesses when they travel. And we're intentional when we're traveling the world about seeking out the black tour operators in that destination that can teach us more about our heritage and our history in these different
Black
parts of the
community.
world. So there is an intentional, intentionality amongst travelers, that they want to have these types of experiences, but yet a lot of tourism boards and DMOs are still reluctant to invest in making certain that these businesses within their local tourism ecosystem are ready to do business, meaning ready to receive tourists and groups. They're not including them in the marketing. But
Mm-hmm.
so it's twofold. It's one that the businesses sometimes are not ready to do
Right.
business globally because they don't even understand that they are part of the global travel and tourism industry.
Right.
So it requires a level of education, but then integration so that they can be in the rooms to be able to meet the buyers and the players that can sell what they have to offer. But
Right.
again, because the industry is very much pay to play, you're not going to see these smaller businesses at travel trade shows that happen, hundreds of them happen around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you see your destination management organization players going to promote, people to come to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Orlando, but they're not taking their small players or tourism businesses with them to promote the local experiences. Because again, if they can't afford to pay to be a part of that delegation, then that's who their priority is. They're paid members, and those who can afford to pay to show up in these rooms, that's the priority.
Now,
So we
I
I'm sorry,
wonder,
go ahead.
is some of that around, you know, I sort of feel a little like, people in this ecosystem are those folks that are kind of at the top of this. I wonder if they feel as though cultures are only attracted to cultures in this tourism space. So black folks will only black folks want to go see what black people are doing. Only
Yeah.
Hispanic people want to go see what Hispanic people are doing.
Yeah.
And they're missing out on the diversity and the diverse experience that people want to cross over. And this is
Yeah.
a good way and a safe way for me to cross over into this other space. When are we going to educate those folks about the missed opportunity when you leave these folks behind?
Right. Well,
Because
that does come into play because on many occasions, especially when I was a tour operator, I would have people in the industry say to me, "Well, your tours are only for black people." I'm like,
no, they're
"No,
not.
that is not true."
There's a lot of
But
white folks
what I
want to see
will
this
say
culture.
on a global level and for a lot of destinations here in the States, they get it. They get the that inbound travelers, especially coming from Germany, coming from
Mhm.
Asia, they want those cultural heritage experiences. They get that. But here's the thing, which bothers me, has been a challenge for me representing Black tour operators, is that they pick and choose which cultural heritage they want to
Right,
amplify and promote. So,
right.
indigenous people, Native Americans, they get a lot of support from the industry.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay. Meaning that Brand USA, which is the marketing organization for the US, when they're marketing cultural heritage, they primarily focus on Native American, the indigenous, people of the country, which I think is great. But
But they're
they
not
have
everywhere.
not done a great job integrating our stories. But here, let me say this, they have started integrating our stories, but the problem with that is that the tour operators that partner with them don't look like us, and they're
Yeah,
not partnering with local tour operators that look like us.
they can
So
speak the
yes, you
language and take you
that's right.
somewhere.
So they have tour operators who go to Memphis and talk about our story, or go, to other places where we have rich civil rights history and the Reconstruction history, or the Gullah Geechee culture heritage.
Mhm.
But these tour operators who are non-black, they're not partnering with the local tour operators, because you know why? They want all the money.
Mhm.
So they
Mhm.
may hire a tour guide as a step-on guide to be on the
Right,
bus to tell the story, but
but that's not so.
that's not equity.
Right.
Because there's no reason why the local Black tour operator who's been telling these stories for years should not be partnering with them so that they can get a piece of the pie as well. But they rather hire a one person as a step-on guide and pay them a couple $100 for a tour, as opposed to creating a long-term partnership with local tour operators who are the keepers and storytellers in these
Right,
destinations.
right. And will that take policy to adapt that, or just flat out money? You know what I
You
mean?
know what? It just takes making the damn decision that you want to be inclusive and
Right. That's true.
intentional.
That's
That's
true.
it don't require policy for people to say, I want to partner with Black tour operators in this destination who are already doing this. It just
Right. That's
takes intentionality and the decision to want to be
do the right
inclusive.
thing. Yes.
Okay. But like I said, the other part of that is that the businesses have to be ready to do business with these tour operators. And
Right.
there is a perception in this industry that if it's Black owned, it's not as the quality is not there. And we even have the same thing with even some of the destination marketing organizations that have Black CEOs or Black VPs.
Right.
They don't
Right.
even do business with us because
Right.
they don't feel like they're going to get a quality product, or that, because it's about reputation and image. That's what they're selling. And so if Black businesses are not ready, set up to succeed, set up professionally with
Right.
insurance,
Right.
with licensing,
Right.
making sure the
Customer
customer service, yes,
service.
all of that is on
Yeah.
point, then
Yes.
it's likely that will continue to be ignored and overlooked and not taken seriously, or not invited to be part of these supply chains. And that's what we've been working to change, because we want to make certain that businesses are ready to do businesses with this industry.
Never- So let me jump back on something you said a little earlier. Um, you talked about, like, the wars and the DEI and what impact it has on tourism, which is, I guess, the point I was definitely trying to make. If we think about, the pandemic, the war, now we're talking DEI, or just flat out the
No,
weather.
we're not talking about DEI anymore.
Well, we're not.
So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a whole nother
yeah,
show right
yeah.
there. But this is one of those industries that once there's a shift in something you have no control over, it could have a huge impact on that $9 trillion number.
Hmm.
You know, as we said, we were both here during the pandemic when everything shut down.
Yeah.
Like nobody was visiting anything. So many of the, venues and gyms and opportunities that were being brought into the neighborhood by your organization just stopped.
Yeah.
So, what are we training these folks that are trying to get into the industry to think about when it comes to a pivot plan? And yeah, let's talk about DEI a little separately. How we, thinking about, you may almost always be at the mercy of something else. How do you stay alive?
Well, again, think about for us, we always have to have a plan A, B, C, and D, sometimes E, F, G.
Right, right.
And we just can't, put all of our eggs in one basket because
Mhm.
at any given time, you may have to pivot.
Mhm.
And if you can't pivot, then most likely your doors are going to close, which we saw a lot of that happen during the
Absolutely.
pandemic.
Mhm.
But we also saw those businesses that um, were set up for success, although they couldn't do tours anymore, or they could not serve people anymore, have people come to the restaurants. What did they
Mhm.
do? We had tour operators create online tour experiences so
Yes,
that they
yes.
were selling online experiences. Some
Mhm.
of them were creating and selling gift baskets that had products from small businesses from their tours.
Right, right, right,
Let's look at the little greenhouse
right,
restaurant with Nicole. They started providing, got a contract to provide, food to people who were struggling during that time
right,
period.
right, right.
Look at um,
Done
Kristen.
Josephine. Yeah,
Yeah, Dunst Josephine. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So there are businesses, if you are positioned, and your business is solid,
Mhm.
then you can pivot, you know, um, to generate revenue in other ways. Okay.
You just have to be innovative and think
You
outside.
have to be innovative, but again, you also
Anyway.
have a solid foundation.
Okay.
Okay. So that your business don't instantly crumble
Right.
because no one's booking your tour anymore or no one's coming to your hotel. You have to be innovative but you also have to leverage the power of partnership
Yes.
and know how to do that.
Yes.
Okay. You have to understand and be able to sell your value proposition to people that you probably wouldn't even consider working with. But if it's going to generate a revenue stream, then you need to figure out, well, how can you align your value proposition to what they're doing so that they see the viability of partnering with you and contracting with you.
Okay.
So it does require innovation, but it also requires, you to plan ahead,
Right.
which is difficult for a lot of businesses to do. But if you can't plan ahead, at least come up with a plan B or C.
Right.
Start building strategic partnerships, with other people in your communities, with other businesses, so that should you need to pivot, at least you have relationships that
Mhm.
you can explore for new opportunities. I want to go back to you were talking about, the war and all of the external factors that are influencing the industry because they have
Mhm.
the war, the tariffs. Since what February, I believe, the
Right.
U.S. travel
It's
and
been
tourism industry has lost $12.5 billion. And
really
what, yeah. And one of our core, most important source markets, guess which market that is?
what? Where?
Especially for Florida,
That
Canada.
would probably be Miami.
No, when I say source markets, I'm meaning the markets where inbound travelers are traveling from into the United States. So Canada is Florida's
Oh
number one
yes,
source
you are
market.
right.
And they are also
Made my
the
head.
number one source market for a lot of destinations in the US. But now that they decided we're not coming to the US, at
Right.
least not for the next
We
4
moved on.
years,
But
$12.5 billion loss
just gone.
gone. And it will continue because it's not just Canada now. There are
It's not.
just like the US
You
is
are right.
quick to put all of these travel advisories
And
on other countries, and
restrictions.
now we have all these restrictions, but 12 other countries that have
Uh-huh.
restrictions. Countries are like,
And they're
well, if
trying
you're
to
doing it to
add
us, we're going
26
to do it
more.
to you.
Exactly. And now they're
But
going to have
here,
26 more. And they are mostly those
black
countries that
countries.
are for black and brown countries that are
Yeah,
culturally
yeah,
that are really would drive that cultural tourism. Which,
right.
okay, again, let's throw out that DEI word. Um, I am intrigued. So the last couple of guests have not been as affected by DEI, but they have been affected by tariffs to some extent. But
Hmm.
this is again one of those industries where I think DEI is huge. How is that one impacting the industry? And what kind of, is it the word I'm looking for? Marketing? Is it wording? What are you having to adapt to now to really still sell? This is about coming to an experience you might not come to maybe even a local audience, but it doesn't fall within DEI because it may affect whatever federal dollars you're getting. How creative are you having to be at this point? Is the industry having to be at this point?
Well, I'll address me in my work personally because, we had been affected by one of the
Mhm.
executive orders, the anti-DEI. I for the past 4 years, for 4 years, I was appointed to the U.S. Travel and Tourism Advisory Board by the Secretary of Commerce, and the nonprofit Chia that I started in 2020. DEI is in our DNA.
Right.
So all of the work that we do, is done through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mhm.
So that was part of my most recent pivot to disrupt for change, because my last year serving on the advisory board, when I just had a gut feeling that this administration would be
Mhm.
coming back, as
Mhm.
difficult as it was, to represent the interests of Black businesses and suppliers in the industry serving on that board, I knew that it would be far more difficult should the new administration
Mhm.
come to pass. So I decided, you know what, I'm not even going to reapply because
Right.
it's just too much. The fight is too
Too
much.
too strong. Mhm.
Right.
And you're not supported.
Exactly. And so, but what I had been doing while I was serving was building relationship with federal agencies, who got it, who understood the importance and value of DEI, because under the recent administration, DEI was a mandate that it was included in every policy, funding, everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so the latter part, fourth quarter 2024, we had solidified a strategic partnership with the International Trade Administration, which handles global exporting, because travel and trade is a global export.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And part of that was that they would work with us to help the small suppliers that we work with
Okay.
access global market so that they could expand their businesses, do business globally. This
Okay.
would have been huge for a lot of these small businesses.
Right.
Then for 3 years, I'd been having meetings with the Minority Business Development Agency around piloting and funding a pilot program that would help us, scale the work, the trainings that we provided, industry specific training for tourism and hospitality SMEs. So I received an email, I think early March,
Mhm.
from one of them saying that our partnership was canceled because of the executive
Because of
order.
the year, right. Right,
Yeah.
right, right, right,
And
right.
then I started the latter part of 2024 when I wasn't getting any responses from the MBDA because of my meeting. They anticipated some changes were going to happen too.
Mm.
So I figured that. the silence was because there's
It's
no way they
uh-huh.
could fund, a program that, has DEI, as its center. So, you know, it was disappointing that those opportunities did not come to pass because it would have set my nonprofit up, for scalability, But it was okay because early last year, I started social enterprise disrupt for change because
Mhm.
I'm always looking ahead.
Right.
And I always have a
Okay.
plan A, B, C, and D.
Right.
And so when after in March, when I got those notices, I went to Europe for 2 weeks and thought about all of the stuff that I'm like, okay, am I done with this? Because I'm like, I'm
Right.
just tired. It's been an
Right.
uphill battle, just tired. And so I came back and decided, okay, it's time to dissolve Chia because it served its purpose,
Right. Right.
and but the work was not done, and I needed to pivot and do it in a different way.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's why there's now Disrupt for Change. And we're really leaning into creating equity and access specifically for underrepresented tourism and hospitality, small and micro enterprises, and also now cultural institutions.
Okay.
And so, but what's also different now is that this initiative is rolled out with a global strategy.
Okay.
So I have relationships around the world because of the work I've been doing in the industry and the boards I've served on and speaking
Hmm.
around the world. So I've been able to leverage some of these international relationships
Right.
to support, expanding the work that I do internationally.
Okay.
And
Nice.
so, yeah,
Very nice.
so Disrupt for Change is a global entity, and we're now serving SMEs, cultural museums worldwide
Okay.
because
Okay.
we've pivoted from doing trainings in person, although we will do trainings, but most of our training is now on demand, which makes the training accessible to these
Everybody.
businesses wherever they're at, whenever they want to take the trainings.
But
We've
for
also, mhm.
go ahead.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead. No, I was going to say we're also focusing more on research and really uncovering and helping the industry understand the disparities that exist among underrepresented Black and Brown suppliers in this industry, because the research does not exist, and where there's no research there's no dollars to support
Correct.
it.
Well, in this country, there may not be any dollars anyway.
Well, and but that's okay. That's why our focus is global. And
Right.
we now have a global partner where we partner with universities around the world to conduct research for us for free.
Okay.
But we're now able to leverage that resource to tell the stories of this unrepresented market of small suppliers that have been excluded.
Right.
And so I'm really excited because the work that we're doing aligns globally. It also aligns here
Absolutely.
domestically, but
Absolutely.
because of what's happening in this country, I'm just not putting all my eggs in this US basket right now.
Which I spoke to another person in the health industry who said the exact same thing. It was time for her to lean into her global connections. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I find interesting, though, is if I am a supplier, um, and as you mentioned, our source countries that have been traditionally bringing a lot of dollars into this country, or they're no longer coming here. Is there a focus now for those in this industry, in this country, looking at more local tourism, meaning trying to attract New York to California or Californians to Florida, or is that what the pivot is for the industry in this country, or are they also looking globally as well?
Well, the industry is global,
Right.
and we are reliant on inbound travelers, people coming from
Ah,
around the world, who want to come to the US. But to your point, yes, the industry has always focused on domestic travel.
Okay.
people getting in cars and driving from one
Wow.
destination to the next, people going to visit family and friends. That's
Mhm.
always been part of the equation for destination marketing organizations. But yes, the industry is leaning more into domestic travel, traveling from state to state, going to
Mhm.
visiting national parks. So yes, what also is happening, because there's a lot of global events that happen in the United States.
Mhm.
And also, there are several international sporting events like FIFA,
Yeah.
the Olympics.
Yeah.
All of these major events are planning to come to the US over the next 3 years. And America 250, celebrating America's 250th birthday. That's next year. So you have all of these global events, but there's still issues with people getting visas approved.
Right. I was like,
That's
how are we going to let these people into these events if they're
but
flying
also, well, because there is an organization called US Travel Association, and they are the advocacy arm for the industry, and they do a great job lobbying Congress.
in? Mhm.
And then also the board I used to serve on, US Travel and Tourism Advisory Board, is also a very influential board that
Okay.
helps to shape public policy
Okay.
for the industry. And so what I've been hearing is that the industry is getting the support from the
Oh,
administration to address some of these pain points and these barriers. Now, one pain point they probably won't be able to address, and that is people's fear of coming to the United States,
mhm,
because
mhm,
their
mhm,
fear of getting locked up
mhm,
or
mhm.
not just being let into the country.
Yes, I agree.
So, the industry is going to have a lot of work to do to convince those who fear coming to the country because of the political
Mhm.
climate right now. But the reality is, there's just people who say, I'm not going to the US, period,
Right.
while the current administration is in office.
And I
So
could see
it's,
that being the
yeah,
case.
so it's a lots of challenges, um, you know, but the
And a lot
industry
of
will
those
survive.
challenges, a lot of those challenges affecting, as you mentioned, the suppliers on the ground.
Exactly.
A small
Exactly.
business owner who has
Right.
relied, I mean, if you think about in Miami, it's a tourist town. We
Right.
make a lot
And
of
not only the
money off tourism.
suppliers, employees. Just
Yes,
think
absolutely.
about when the pandemic hit, the first people that were laid off were
Yes.
your service workers in hospitality and tourism. And it took several years for the industry to try to recruit. And still, we're not back at the same numbers of
Right.
employees, because folks said, you know what, since I was the first to go, I'm going to, go work in a different industry. And that's what
Mhm.
they did.
Mhm.
And right before, I will say, the first of this year, we had most destinations, especially Florida, had rebound and exceeded their 2019 revenue and tourist traffic
Now we're
goals.
now we're back on the
But
problem.
here we back.
Mhm.
But
For
the
different
industry,
reasons.
but the industry is resilient, and it will rebound again
Mhm.
once. I don't know if things are going to settle down um, within the next 3.5 years, but the industry will rebound. It has always rebound. I don't know. I don't think we really know what the ultimate impact will be. You
Right.
know,
Right.
from people who are in Canada, especially if the leadership continues to alienate other
Mhm.
countries.
Right.
So we
And
just have to wait and see.
part of the confusion is, there are changes every day. We wake up
Every
to
day.
every day. We've
Every
gotta,
day.
if you're going to do something, let us figure out how that impacts the economy, adapt, be flexible, innovate, and then, make other changes based on if there is a necessity for that. So I feel like with every industry right now, I was talking to somebody from shipping, health, everybody's sort of at that. I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure how to move
Right.
because I don't know
I'll
what's going
tell I'll tell you what, a lot of us are moving out. The-
Yes.
a lot of Black people are moving to different countries. I'm a part of
Right.
about 8 different Black expat groups from different countries, and we are gone. I mean, there's a lot of us already gone, but there's so many people that are planning over the next 2 to 3 years to
Hmm.
get the hell out of here. Um, because we're tired, of constantly having to
I agree.
fight to
I agree.
live,
And
you
and
know.
have our value be respected.
Exactly,
Folks make money off
exactly.
what we do all the time, and but
Hmm.
then we're the first people you attack. So it's like,
Absolutely. It's difficult to get ahead in this country.
right, it is. It's very much
Especially now because a lot of the policies that have come out of DC have been intentional about setting us back,
right,
hurting us, taking from us.
right.
Um, and it's like,
Are
why?
we done with are we done with that yet? Like,
No. And
are we done with that?
we thought we were in
Yeah.
the last administration, but we have a
Here we're
very
back
clear
again.
reminder that
Hmm.
nope,
We need to
this
be.
country is only for a certain set of people that don't look like us. So,
I told my husband, he's from Kurdistan, and I was like, okay, we might need to get on a plane soon. Let's make sure we
girl,
can
if
get
my
out.
husband was from another country, please, I already have my second citizenship someplace.
I'm
And
gonna be
that's no
all right.
lie. That
I'm
is
gonna be
no
all
lie.
right.
Yes,
So yes, 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 yes. Well, tell us first of all. Thank you again for this conversation. I think,
sure.
even though it is specific to the tourism industry, I think even cross conversations about what other people are doing spark ideas industry to industry. So that's why I love really talking about the pivot plan. So I do appreciate it. Tell me how we can find you.
Well, you can find me on my website,
Mhm,
disruptforchange.com. Um, Also, diversitytourismacademy.com.
mhm,
You
mhm.
can find me on Instagram, Disrupt for Change, official Stephanie M. Jones, and my podcast, The Necessary Disruptor.
I saw that. Y'all check it
Yeah.
out. Well, thank
Yeah.
you again. I really appreciate your showing up for us. And I really encourage, and like I said, I've known Stephanie for a very long time, and this is her passion, but she's definitely going to be the driving force around this if we can ever get back to our normal state.
I think normal is gone. It's just
Yeah,
we have to reimagine what life
I,
should look like for us,
I agree.
regardless of it's in this country or outside this country. Um, we have to reimagine what our future looks like.
That's very true. I
Hmm.
very true. And I think in a way it's an opportunity.
Hmm.
Um,
I think so too.
I don't know if we really know. My brother and I have talked about this. Generally, folks our age did not experience what our parents and grandparents experienced. So we are kind of coming into this a little bit just based on stories, but not having lived it. So
Yeah,
we're trying to adapt and understand at the same time. But I'm excited about, this is an opportunity for us to be innovative and really make a difference. So let's do it.
absolutely. Yep. Let's do it.
Thanks so much.
Let's
Please
do it.
keep us abreast of what you're doing. We'll definitely share. And when you get the podcast going again, let us know. I'll put it out
I
there.
will definitely. And I love to have you on the show as well.
Sure. Thank you. I love to. Have a great day.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I hope you got a world of information from that, especially if you're in the tourism industry or if you see opportunity in the tourism industry. She was a wealth of information around how you need to get prepared. We will not be back here next week because it's July 4th, and I figured nobody wants to see me next week, but we'll be back the following week with more industry talk around the pivot plan. We look forward to it. And y'all have a great holiday. Bye bye.